The young black waitress had no idea that this day would change her life forever. When Clint Eastwood walked into the restaurant, she thought it would be just another ordinary workday. But then, as he left behind a small note. And when she read it, she burst into tears. What could have moved her so deeply? Stay tuned until the end of the story, because the truth behind this note will leave you in disbelief. Before we delve into this story, let us know where you're watching from. Share your city or country in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow, we'll bring you another inspiring story, tailored just for you. The story begins. When Clint Eastwood sat in her section, she had no inkling that her world was about to turn upside down. Emily adjusted her apron, glancing at the clock hanging above the diner counter. Nearly 7 p.m., the time when the dinner rush usually subsided, giving way to a slower pace to close out the shift. For most, the small diner tucked away off the highway was just a pit stop, a place for a quick bite before continuing their journey. For Emily, it was her lifeline. At 28, she balanced the long hours here with raising her 6-year-old son, Jordan. Every tip and every paycheck went towards maintaining their modest apartment and paying for Jordan's ever-growing list of school supplies. She moved gracefully from table to table, her warm smile a shield against the exhaustion gnawing at her. The regulars knew her story, or at least parts of it. A few would slip her an extra $1 or $2 when they could, but Emily never asked for pity. She had learned early on that the world wasn't fair, and her only option was to keep pushing forward. The bell above the door jingled, drawing Emily's attention. She looked up, expecting another weary traveler off the road. Instead, a man walked in with a quiet confidence that seemed to thicken the very air in the room. He wore a simple button-down shirt and jeans, his sun-weathered face partially obscured by a low-pulled cap. It took a moment, but when he glanced her way, she knew exactly who he was. Clint Eastwood, the Clint Eastwood. Her breath caught in her throat. She wasn't one to fawn over celebrities. She didn't have the time or energy for it. But this was different. Clint Eastwood was an icon, a man her late father used to talk about when they watched old westerns together. For a fleeting moment, memories of those times flickered through her mind, but she didn't have time to dwell. Clint settled into a booth in the corner, and Emily knew it was her turn to serve him. But this wasn't just another customer, and something about his quiet presence made her heart race. Emily grabbed her notepad and pen, took a deep breath, and approached the booth. As she drew closer, she noticed the subtle details. His hands, slightly sun-worn but steady, resting on the table, the sharp eyes beneath, the brim of his cap, seeming to see everything without revealing too much. He looked up as she stopped beside him, his expression calm, almost unreadable. "Good evening," she began, her voice steadier than she expected. "What can I get started for you?" He scanned the menu for a brief moment before pushing it aside. "Just a coffee and a medium-rare burger, no onions. Simple." Emily jotted it down, but she couldn't ignore the slight tremor in her hand as she turned to walk away. Clint's voice stopped her. "Busy night?" She turned back to him, surprised. Most customers didn't bother with small talk, unless they were regulars. "Not too bad," she replied, offering a small smile. "Keeps me on my toes." He nodded, his expression softening slightly. "You've got good pace." "It's not easy to keep up in a place like this." She blinked, unsure how to respond. Was he complimenting her? Clint Eastwood, a man she'd only ever seen in movies, was remarking on her work ethic. She managed a polite smile before turning back to the counter to put in his order. But her mind was buzzing with questions. Why was he here, in this tiny diner off the highway? He could afford the fanciest restaurants in California. Yet here he was, sipping water from a chipped glass, waiting for a burger like any other traveler. When the food was ready, Emily brought the plate and coffee to his table. She placed them down carefully, catching a brief, appreciative glance from him. "Thank you," he said simply. "You're welcome," she replied, trying to sound casual. But she couldn't shake the feeling that this moment, this ordinary interaction, was somehow different. As she moved to serve other tables, she noticed he wasn't rushing his meal. He sat there, almost contemplative, occasionally taking a sip of his coffee. But why did it feel like he was here for more than just a meal? Something about his presence lingered in her mind, and she couldn't shake the feeling that tonight was anything but ordinary. Emily busied herself with refilling coffee cups, clearing tables, and taking new orders, but she couldn't help glancing towards Clint's booth every now and then. He ate slowly, almost methodically, as if he had all the time in the world. Occasionally, their eyes would meet, and he would give a polite nod, a silent acknowledgement that sent a flutter through her stomach. After he finished eating, Clint signaled her with a slight lift of his hand. Emily wiped her hands on her apron and approached, carefully maintaining her composure. "Everything all right?" she asked, her voice steady. "Perfect," he said with a small smile. "That was one of the best burgers I've had in a long time." She chuckled softly, the compliment catching her off guard. "Well, I'll be sure to tell the chef. He'll be thrilled to hear that." For a moment, Clint didn't say anything. He just looked at her, and in that brief silence, it felt like he was studying her. Not in a judgmental way, but with a curiosity that made her feel exposed, yet strangely seen. "You've got good energy," he said finally. "You remind me of someone I knew a long time ago." Emily blinked, unsure how to respond. Was this a compliment? A memory? She couldn't tell. "Well, thank you," she managed, her cheeks warming. "I'm just trying to get through the day like everyone else." He nodded, his eyes twinkling with something she couldn't quite place. "That's the secret, isn't it? Just getting through." Before she could reply, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a few bills. He placed them on the table along with a folded piece of paper. "Keep the change," he said, standing up, "and read this when you have a moment." Emily stared at the paper, her heart pounding. "Thank you," she said softly, not sure if he heard her. As he walked towards the door, the bell jingled as he exited. And just like that, he was gone. For a few moments, she stood motionless by the booth, staring at the paper as if it might burn her fingers. What could he have written? And why did he seem so intent on her reading it? But those questions would have to wait. There were still tables to serve, and Emily wasn't one to leave a job half done, even if her mind was racing with anticipation. By the time Emily finished clearing Clint's booth, the diner had quieted down. The last of the evening's customers were lingering over their coffee or chatting quietly, and the soft music from the jukebox filled the room. She picked up the folded paper with trembling fingers, tucking it into her apron pocket as she finished cleaning the table. She wasn't sure why she felt so nervous. It was just a piece of paper, wasn't it? When her shift ended, Emily slipped into the back room to gather her belongings. Curiosity finally getting the better of her, she pulled out the paper, carefully unfolding it. Her eyes scanned the first few lines, and her breath caught in her throat. "Dear Emily, I don't know much about you, but in the short time I've been here, I've seen something rare, true resilience. Watching you manage this place with grace, even under pressure, is a reminder of the strength that exists in the everyday heroes of this world. You remind me of someone very dear to me, who taught me the value of hard work and kindness. I don't know your story, but I can see in your eyes that you've carried more than your fair share of burdens. That's why I wanted to do something, no strings attached." Emily's hands began to tremble as she continued reading. "I've left a small gesture for you to use in whatever way you see fit, whether it's for your son, your future, or simply a moment of respite. I hope it brings you some peace. People like you deserve to be seen, and I see you." Tucked inside the paper was a check. Emily's heart nearly stopped when she saw the amount, $10,000. Her knees buckled, and she sank onto the bench in the back room, tears streaming down her cheeks. It wasn't just the money, though that in itself was life-changing. It was the words, the acknowledgement, the feeling that someone as accomplished and legendary as Clint Eastwood had taken the time to notice her, to care about someone who often felt invisible in the world. It was overwhelming, but even as she tried to process it all, a question lingered. Why her? And what would she do with this unexpected gift? Emily sat in the back room for what seemed like hours, her mind reeling with emotions. The check in her hand felt surreal, like a dream. She thought of the bills stacked on her kitchen counter, the worn-out sneakers her son Jordan had been wearing for months, and the leaky faucet in their small apartment that she couldn't afford to fix. This money could change so much, but beyond the financial relief, Clint's words lingered in her mind. "You remind me of someone very dear to me." Who was that person, and what had made Clint Eastwood, of all people, see something in her? It wasn't just the money or the note. It was the way he had looked at her, with a respect and recognition she hadn't felt in years. Emily wiped her tears and took a deep breath. She knew she couldn't keep this to herself, so she called her best friend, Madison, who had been her rock through countless hardships. Within minutes, Madison was at the diner, sitting across from Emily in one of the empty booths. "Wait, wait, wait," Madison said, holding up her hands as Emily handed her the note. "You mean Clint Eastwood left you this?" Emily nodded, her eyes still puffy from crying. "I don't even know why. I didn't do anything special." Madison read the note in silence, her eyes widening with each word. When she got to the check, she let out a low whistle. "Oh my God, this is insane. Do you know what this could mean for you and Jordan?" "I know," Emily said, her voice barely a whisper, "but it doesn't make sense. Why would someone like him care about someone like me?" Madison reached across the table and took Emily's hand. "Because he saw you, Emily. He saw what I've seen all along. You work harder than anyone I know, and you never let life beat you down. People notice that kind of strength." Emily stared down at the check, her heart heavy with gratitude, but also with doubt. "What if I'm not worthy? What if this is some kind of mistake?" "There's no mistake," Madison said firmly. "You deserve this. The question is, what are you going to do with it?" But that was the question, wasn't it? And as much as Emily wanted to celebrate, she couldn't ignore the weight of this unexpected gift, or the responsibility that came with it. That night, Emily sat at her kitchen table long after Jordan had gone to bed. The note and the check were laid out before her. The small apartment was quiet, save for the occasional creak of the old pipes and the soft hum of the overhead light flickering gently. Her thoughts raced in 1,000 directions. The money could pay off the overdue rent, replace the unreliable car she depended on, and give Jordan opportunities she had only dreamed of until now. But as enticing as those possibilities were, they also terrified her. She picked up the note again, reading Clint's words for the 10th time. "I hope it brings you some peace. People like you deserve to be seen, and I see you." Those words struck a deeper emotional chord than she expected. How many years had she spent just trying to stay afloat, working double shifts, skipping meals so Jordan would have enough? She had pushed herself to the brink of exhaustion so many times she had lost count. And through it all, she had felt invisible, as if the world didn't care whether she made it or not. But Clint Eastwood had seen her. He had seen her struggle, her determination, her resilience, and in that moment, she realized this wasn't just about the money. It was about believing that she deserved something better. Emily thought of her father, who had always been her biggest cheerleader before he passed away. He used to say, "Don't let the world beat you down, sweetheart. You've got a fire in you." For the first time in years, she felt that fire rekindling. She pulled out a notebook and began scribbling down ideas, things she could do with the money to make a lasting change. Maybe she could take an accounting class, a career she had always dreamed of but never had the time or resources to pursue. Maybe she could start a small college fund for Jordan, giving him a chance at a brighter future. But one thought kept resurfacing, louder than all the others: pay it forward. Clint's gesture had changed her life, and she couldn't shake the idea of doing the same for someone else. The uncertainty was still there. The road ahead felt daunting, but for the first time in a long time, Emily allowed herself to hope. The morning sun streamed through the window as Emily stood in the kitchen, sipping a cup of coffee and watching Jordan play with his action figures on the worn rug. The check and the note still lay on the table, now neatly folded after a sleepless night of contemplation. She had made her decision. She called Madison first, who immediately offered to watch Jordan for the afternoon. Emily explained that she needed some time to get things in order, and Madison didn't ask any questions. She simply said, "You do what you need to do, I've got Jordan." With Jordan happily settled at Tasha's place, Emily drove to the bank. The check felt heavy in her purse, its presence almost too surreal to believe. The teller, a young woman with a bright smile, raised an eyebrow when she saw the amount. "This is quite a deposit," the teller said, her voice polite but curious. Emily nodded, offering a small smile. "It's a gift." The teller didn't ask any further questions, and Emily felt a wave of relief as the check was processed. She felt a strange mix of emotions: relief, excitement, and an almost overwhelming sense of responsibility. This money wasn't just for her. It was a chance to rewrite her story and give Jordan a better life. After leaving the bank, Emily drove to a local community college. For years, she had passed by the campus, wondering what it would be like to sit in a classroom again, to learn, to grow. She walked inside, her hands trembling as she approached the admissions desk. A kind-faced woman greeted her and asked how she could help. "I want to enroll," Emily said, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. "In accounting." The woman smiled warmly. "You've come to the right place. Let's get started." As Emily filled out the paperwork, she felt a sense of purpose she hadn't known in years. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about showing Jordan that it's never too late to pursue your dreams, no matter how impossible they may seem. But as Emily stepped out of the admissions office, a new thought struck her. What if this was just the beginning? What if Clint's gesture wasn't just a gift, but a spark to ignite a much larger fire? Weeks turned into months, and the changes in Emily's life were nothing short of transformative. She balanced her shifts at the diner with evening classes at the community college. And though it wasn't easy, there was a newfound determination in her step. Jordan noticed it too. He proudly told his friends, "My mom's going to college." Emily couldn't help but smile every time she heard that. But it wasn't just her own life Emily wanted to change. Inspired by Clint's gesture, she began setting aside a portion of the money for a small fund to help others in her community. Whether it was a struggling single parent in need of groceries, or a student who couldn't afford textbooks, Emily quietly stepped in, paying it forward in the ways Clint's note had encouraged her. One evening, as Emily flipped through her accounting textbook at the kitchen table, Jordan tugged on her sleeve. "Mom," he asked, his big brown eyes filled with curiosity, "do you think that man will ever come back to the diner?" Emily paused, the thought catching her off guard. Would Clint Eastwood ever return? She didn't know, but his impact on her life was something she would carry with her always. "Maybe," she said softly, ruffling Jordan's hair. "But even if he doesn't, he'll always be a part of our story." And that was the truth. Clint's gesture had reminded Emily of the power of kindness, of seeing someone for who they are and lifting them up when the world felt heavy. It had reignited her belief in herself, in the possibilities of life, and in the importance of paying it forward. As Emily closed her textbook and prepared for bed that night, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. Her journey was far from over, but for the first time, she wasn't just surviving. She was thriving, one step at a time. And so, the next time a stranger walked into her section at the diner, Emily greeted them with the same warmth and grace, knowing that sometimes even the smallest interactions could change a life forever. Every act of kindness, no matter how small, had the potential to create ripples that extended far beyond what we could see. If the story touched you, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who might need a little inspiration today. This story is a reminder that a single act of kindness, no matter how small, can change someone's life. Have you ever received an unexpected gesture that changed your perspective? Share your story in the comments. You never know, it might inspire someone. Right now, if you found this story meaningful, don't forget to share it with your friends and family to spread the good values together. Thank you for watching and supporting. Please press subscribe to the channel to not miss the next inspirational stories. Every day, we will bring you a new story full of emotions and meaning. See you in the next video. Have a great day. Thank you for supporting the channel. Please like, share, and subscribe to receive the latest updates. The stories are collected from various sources and do not represent any individual or organization. They are shared for the purpose of spreading humane values in life and have been rewritten with the support of AI. If there are any errors, Please forgive with understanding. Wishing you all the best in life.